Meteorologist Robert Speta, and let's talk about that chance of some wintry precipitation across the first coast. And I'm being very careful about saying wintry precipitation because that encompasses freezing rain, sleet, as well as snow and a very cold rain out here. The full spectrum of meteorological conditions are expected here as we go through Tuesday, heading into Wednesday. But there's a lot going on in our forecast and a very busy few days. I'm definitely earning my paycheck here at First Coast News today, tomorrow, and then over towards Tuesday and the Wednesday. Today, when we're doing this live cast here, raining heavy throughout the morning. We even had a tornado warning around 7 o'clock in St. Johns County, 3 to 5 inches in a good swath of the First Coast along the I-10 corridor, producing some localized ponding and flooding out there. But as we go ahead through our afternoon into the evening, temperature is going to start to drop, and especially heading through Monday morning, we have another weather impact alert in place. Things are going to be dry, but it's going to be cold. And when I say cold, I really mean it. The MLK parade was postponed because of these temperatures dropping down into the 20s with the wind chill in place because it's going to be a strong northerly breeze. So just dangerously cold. You don't want people outside in a parade for that. And just generally, you want to stay inside Monday morning. With the cold already in place, the moisture is going to arrive by Tuesday afternoon through the evening. And we're going to be looking at this mixed bag of precipitation ranging from snow for parts of Ware County especially. So the further north you go, you might get that true snow. But I think for a good portion of the First Coast, especially north of I-10, we're going to be looking at a higher chance of more of sleet and freezing rain creating these slick conditions. And I want to talk about in just a moment what exactly that means and why it's important to continue to check back in, because unlike a hurricane, we know the storm's going to come. We know kind of generally the impacts are going to be. And of course, you're watching what where the eye wall is exactly going to be. I think if you want to look at it in that context, because a lot of people on the First Coast know hurricane terminology, the eye wall of this would be where that freezing rain setup is going to be, because that's where you're going to be looking at the higher chance of some down tree limbs and maybe even the chance of power outages with the course slick roads, bridges freezing, things like that. So let's talk about this. First off, big blast of cold air coming in from the north and west. Monday morning, wind chills are going to be into the 20s. So the cold air will be in place with that. You talk about the cold air setting up, which and then behind that, you get that moisture coming in. And this is why Tuesday night through Wednesday morning, we do have that weather impact alert in place for rain, snow, sleet, freezing rain across the First Coast. You want to prep for that cold if possible here. Can't stress that enough. Here on Monday morning, we also have that weather impact alert in place too because of those colder temperatures. Here's a look at the general map though. So if you are in Putnam County, Flagler County, St. Johns County, for the most part, it's going to be a cold rain, friends. And I think for the most part in Jacksonville, it's probably going to be a cold rain, especially if you head out towards our coastal areas. With that said, if you head into western areas of Duval, you get west of I-95, that's where we're going to start to see that chance of some wintry mix in here. And it's sleet or freezing rain, this potential. And then we're talking about even that chance of flurries back towards the north. But there is a fine line, not only at the surface, because you're probably thinking, okay, what are you talking about, weather guy? If it's above 32 degrees, it's going to be rain. If it's below, it's going to be snow, right? We look at the atmosphere in 3 dimensions, not 2 dimensions. And what I mean by that is you want to see what's happening, not only at the surface, it could be 32 degrees, but let's say about 1,000 to 2,000 feet up, we might get what we call overrunning. So the cold air will be hanging down to the surface because cold air is heavy. But then you might get some warmer air on top of that. So what happens is if we see snow fall through a layer of warmer air, it's going to want to melt. But if it falls through that colder area below that, which we're likely going to see Wednesday morning, then it could refreeze and become sleet or these ice pellets, or it could stay super cold and once it hits the ground, it becomes freezing rain. And there is a very small threshold for all this. We look at things we call soundings, which is basically a vertical profile of the atmosphere. This is a model guidance for Wednesday early morning, and the 0 degree line is kind of that dash line right in the middle of the screen. I have the circle there of what we're watching. That line, the temperature showed going above the 32, then back below the 32, and it really depends on how long it stays in there. So I can't stress enough that It's going to be a very dynamic setup here. I think everybody, especially northwest of Jacksonville, so north of I-10 out towards Columbia County in the southeast Georgia, needs to be ready for that spectrum of precipitation. Maybe starting off with rain, then edging over towards some sleet, freezing rain. You might get some time with flurries here for a short period of time. It may just be for a few minutes, but in general, we're going to go from, some true snowfall to maybe even some wet, sloppy type snow. And this is going to keep the snowfall accumulations down since it's so wet, since it's almost kind of a, it's not really a term, but a warm snow. It's going to be closer to almost like a sloppy snowball, sweaty snowman type thing. If you wanted to make a snowman, it's not going to be the pretty stuff out here. I can't stress enough with that. So this is something I just want you to keep in mind at home here. Keep your expectations aligned with our forecast here. And what I mean by that, you're not going to get a winter wonderland here, but we are going to have some sloppy conditions. One of the big questions is people have been asking, are the bridges going to freeze into the Jacksonville area? I think there's a chance, maybe 10 to 20% here. For the most part, they should stay open, but even if we get a little bit of a glaze or a little bit of sleet on a lot of the bridges here, remember, bridges freeze before roads do, so that could create some very slick conditions out there. This is for Wednesday morning. We're talking about after midnight, and that pink indicating that rain snow mix, the blue indicating pure snow. And you can see how far this particular model, fairly aggressive on it, dives it down further towards the south. Then we take a look at the ECMWF. That's this model here, and a little bit further towards the north. But then I want to show you the GFS. That's our global forecasting system, the American model. That's even less aggressive as the extent. This one actually keeps Jacksonville in just pure rain the entire time, and it's just a little bit different in the dynamics here with the computer guidance. But I do believe northwest of Jacksonville, you're going to get that full range, that full spectrum of impacts from this. So just be ready, for that chance of some wintry weather. So let's go county by county here across the First Coast. And then after I'm done with that, I'm going to answer a few of your questions here, because some of you are watching here live on our First Coast News Facebook, YouTube, and of course on FCN Plus. So Ware County, talking about over towards Brantley and in the Pierce. Rain to ice with some flurries as well. You're going to get the whole mixed bag here. Now, I think Ware County, especially around the Waycross area, you have the highest chance of true snowfall. And what I mean by that, you look outside, you see the flakes coming down. The stuff you see in movies, guys, not quite common around here, but you have the highest chance. Naturally, because you're further north, but also the dynamics are going to be better there. You're not quite getting the overrunning. Once this moves towards the south and east, some of that warmer air is going to try to get into those mid-levels, so a couple thousand feet up, especially coming in off the coast. So that modifies things closer to the coast, and that's where you're going to start to see that wintry mix. Talking about that sleet, freezing rain possible. Freezing rain can occur if the ground has to be pretty cold, though, or at least at the frozen point, so 32 degrees. If it isn't, then it just can't freeze on contact with the ground. Something I want you to keep in mind here. Over towards Duval, heading into Clay County, eastern areas of Duval and eastern Clay over towards St. John's, probably going to just stay straight rain. You have that modifying effect from the rivers and the ocean. That should keep things just warm enough where you're not worried so much about frozen precipitation there. Still possible, friends. And also, you could happen even near the coast is that it rains, but then temperatures drop quickly behind this, and you get some ice out there. So these are things, just, I want you to manage your expectations here. Just keep you in mind, if you do see sleet or freezing rain, we don't have salt trucks here. So let's say you're from up north, and you're like, I drive in this stuff all the time. I've heard it from everybody saying, oh, an inch, 2 inches, that's nothing. I'm used to that. I grew up outside of Buffalo, New York. Yeah, I get you. But we don't have salt trucks here, and a lot of people are not used to driving. If you are in any of these slick roads, remember, using your brakes, go slow, and try not to use your brakes. If you have to, tap on them. Slow yourself down gradually. Out towards Columbia and the Baker County, higher chance of some ice out there. So we're talking about freezing rain and some snow flurries there as well. You're a little bit further inland. You're away from the coastal areas, so a higher chance of that frozen precipitation. So icy roads may be maybe even some power outages for our friends there, especially in those heavily wooded areas. If you do get some freezing rain, that could weigh down the limbs and lean on power lines, and that's kind of one of our concerns. We're talking about power outages. It's not the wind. I know we're used to hurricanes and the wind here. It's not the case with this type of setup. We're more worried about the ice accumulation, because ice is heavy. Water is heavy. Now, if it sticks to trees, if it sticks to power lines, that weighs that down. I don't think we're going to get quite enough to have widespread power outages, but, the possibility is there of some sporadic ones. So this model is from our ECMWF, and I think this has been handling kind of that ice threat pretty well here. It's indicating the heaviest. So we're talking about maybe about a half an inch, and that's a lot, a tenth of an inch to a quarter in some of those areas in red. That is enough to take down some weaker tree limbs out here. Now, this line has been wavering a little bit. Right now, it stretches across a good portion of Nassau County over towards Folkestone into Camden County. But I think it might even edge a little bit further towards the north, so maybe even closer to Ware County. But remember, that's where the highest chance of some of that heavier ice accumulation, which I think is the main threat with this particular weather event. And in fact, if you're curious, well, why is it red in across this swath on the first coast? What's going on in Georgia? Why is there nothing happening there? It's because that is going to be mainly snow north of that frozen precipitation, or the ice line there. So you kind of got that mixed bag in the middle, and then north of that, you get the straight flurries. And that's why a good portion of Georgia is not going to be seeing freezing rain. They're just going to see the snow, because they don't have, as I started off with this update here, they don't have that dynamic process. They don't have that mid-level warming. It's just cold from the surface up to the upper levels where that snow is falling from. So they're just pure snow. That's straight flurries, but it's that mixed bag right in the middle. And I'll look at it one more time here with the ice. That is my biggest worry. These are the type of spots, yesterday we were talking about some simple things you can do to prepare for this, like putting a cardboard box on your windshield or just propping up your windshield wipers. That's another smart thing you can do. Also, take time ahead of this overall event to fill up your gas tank. And it's not just because, you want to have gas in your car in case, there's a shortage or anything like that. I don't think that's going to happen. But if you have to drive somewhere, which don't recommend against if we get this event with decent ice accumulation, but it also adds weight. Gasoline is heavy, adds weight to your car, gives you better traction. Some smaller things that just remember and think about if you're going to be heading out, especially if you have a lighter car. If you have, a big Ford F-350, I'm not too terribly concerned about the weight. But if you're driving a Toyota Yaris or a Prius, something that is traditionally lighter, filling your gas tank actually can make a small but noticeable difference. Small snow models for Waycross, that's what's specifically shown here. The ECMWF continues to be very aggressive. The GFS more giving you the kind of that freezing rain type setup, but it is going to be cold. Keep that in mind. Waycross, look at this, 20s Tuesday over towards Wednesday, so definitely be cold enough for any form of precipitation here. And I think that's going to extend, like I mentioned, down towards Folkestone into parts of Duval County. Now, I mentioned a moment ago about the bridges. Bridges are a concern because they freeze faster than roads. Basically, it's heat loss. You have a more surface area at the bottom and the top of a bridge versus just the top of a roadway. So that does cause heat loss faster. So if we're going to worry about freezing rain, and it has to, hit the supercooled water droplets have to hit the surface and freeze on contacts, it will happen on a bridge first. Just because it's traditionally going to be colder. So that is something to also remember if you are driving overnight Tuesday night into Wednesday morning across many of the bridges, even in downtown Jacksonville, albeit I don't expect them to freeze, but that is going to be the higher chance. If you're looking at southeast Georgia, of course, that is going to be the higher chance for some of these bridge freezes here too. I do want to answer a few of your questions. There's one person like Cody here. Thanks for watching, Cody. Says, I've seen a flurry in at 15 years ago, they had flurries on South Side. I do remember actually about 15, 20 years ago, I was in Mayport and I remember seeing snow flurries, but it was not accumulated. Last time we had snow accumulation in Jacksonville was back in 1989. Now, we have had flurries, we've had traces, but we haven't had the accumulation in quite some time here. But thanks for chiming in, Cody. And flurries are possible. I think a trace is possible in Jacksonville. It's possible, but it's going to be more like at 3 in the morning, you look outside and you go, oh, it's snowing, and then it goes back to sleep. It shouldn't last too long. Nicholas says you Floridians are so cute. Now, Nicholas, this is, and not to call you out because I get it. I mean, I totally understand. Other parts of the country get feet of snow, and you look at us and we're panicking over an inch, but we're just not prepped for it. And that's why our winter weather criteria, our warnings are a little bit different than the rest of the country. For example, if you're in upstate New York, a half a foot of snowfall, you get those winter weather warnings. The Rockies, about a foot of snow. For us, it's an inch because we don't have the infrastructure in place to deal with this. For example, at the airports, don't have de-icing equipment. So, of course, that can impact transportation. We don't have any salt on the roadways. A lot of vehicles, a lot of people just don't know how to handle it. Driving in the snow, and because that is a trait, that is something you kind of have to learn the feel of how icy conditions are out there. So Stephanie said, oh my God, like kind of panicking with exclamation points. It's obviously a mockery comment on our Facebook page here. And that's not our goal. We're not trying to scream here and say, the end of the world is coming with this, guys. And that's the whole point of having these long updates is I want to manage your expectations. We're not saying it's going to be widespread power outages, but at the same time, if you get up Wednesday morning, even in Jacksonville, and you get out on the roads the same way you're going to do it any other day, you're going to have issues because the roads could be slick. Even if you get a little ice on your car, you're going to be running late just because you're trying to figure it out, how to get off your car. A debit card works good in frost, or it manages with frost. But if you got a good 1/10 to a quarter of an inch of ice accumulation, sleet on your windshield, you're going to be a while there with a card. You need to make sure, plan accordingly, as I mentioned, piece of cardboard on the windshield. That works wonders. You can just rip that right off. But then you still have to worry about all sorts of other things. So do you think schools will close in Duval? Christina, I can say that I am not the person. I'll caveat this. I'm not the person to even really mention that. I do think that you should definitely monitor it with the schools. I am not going to say they're not going to close. How about that? Because a lot of the schools have already put out statements, so a lot of the school districts saying, hey, we're watching this. Because let's say in the next 24 hours, this does shift further north, then Jacksonville just gets a cold rain, and you're not really, the big thing is going to be like, what was all this hype about? If it shifts a little bit further south, it's going to be the opposite. And when I say little, I mean a 1 to 2 degree difference, which in this type of setup, it makes a big difference. I mean, if it's summertime and it's raining, it's 88, and then it warms up to 91, who cares, right? But if it's 33 and it cools down here to 29 to 30, that does make a drastic difference. That's why we're pinpointing this, and why I think schools are definitely monitoring it. I think Wednesday morning's commute is going to be a rough go. And for especially western Duval County. Out near the beaches, probably going to just stay rain. But it's a good question. And firstcoastnews.com, we actually have an article listing the latest information. So, you're watching live right now. I'm giving you the information I got, but you can continue to check back in there. The latest information before the schools have the official announcements out, the stuff that we're kind of getting here about, they're monitoring or that they got a statement out on it or something like that. So make sure you check that out. That's a good question, Christina. Thank you very much. And let's see. Corey says, what about Nassau County, Yulee, Fernandina Beach area? Especially, let's see. I just had the county by county up here. I'm going to try to flip back to it. I'm running this almost like a PowerPoint. I have to go backwards and forwards, so I can't just click to each slide. But I'm going to go back to the county by county here. So we're going to scoot back through this real quick because it's a good question of Corey Jennings here. Nassau County, Yulee, Fernandina Beach area. I think the closer you get to the coast, so let's say you are in Fernandina Beach or Amelia Island, you got the intercoastal on one side, you got the ocean on the other side. So you should be mostly modified by this. And what I mean by that is you're probably going to get a cold rain, or if you get anything, maybe some sleet. I think snow, or if you see snow, let's say you do see snow, out there at the coast. What'll happen is that you'll probably see it, and then once it hits the ground or gets right near the surface, it's going to melt off pretty quickly. Because remember, snow accumulation takes place when it hits the ground, right? And it has to stack on top of each other. But if the ground is 40 degrees, it's going to warm off fairly quickly. And if you got the modifying effect from the coast, yeah, you're probably not going to see a sticking accumulation. Now, if you are talking about Nassau County in northwestern Nassau County, so we're looking out towards like Callahan area, or even extending into Georgia over towards Folkston, those are the spots, and you can see right here, this graphic, where you probably have the higher chance of a wintry mix. So I'm talking about, there is that chance of snow, but more so freezing rain and icing. In fact, I think the bullseye for the highest chance of icing is going to be from Waycross to Brunswick to Folkston. That's kind of our Bermuda Triangle of the chance of icing out here. And I think extending across the Okefenokee back towards Columbia County, there's also a chance there. Lesser population in those forested areas and out towards the swamp there. But as far as the biggest impacts, folks in the Waycross over towards Brunswick, probably the highest chance of freezing rain, sleet type precipitation too, which is the stuff that, is definitely going to bring the highest risk of travel and impacts out here. So a very good question. And Corey just asked about Nassau County. Jerica also asking about Nassau County, Callahan, Yulee. I hope that actually answers your question right there. I specifically mentioned the Callahan area out towards Yulee. You're going to probably see kind of a mix here. Now, friends, I've said this a few times. I can't stress enough. We are still 3 days out here, and I mentioned a moment ago, and I'm going to put it in Florida text or in Florida kind of ideology here. 3-4 days out, we would, if we were talking about a tropical system, so let's say we have a hurricane, you have the cone of air, and we right now at this point, and I'll go back to this graphic I just had here a moment ago. It showed all the numbers here, the days out. So like 3 to 4 days out, we would say, okay, we know we're going to get kind of impacted by this, but we're not quite sure the exact impacts. Now we're about 3 to 5 days out. So even if you were talking about a tropical system or hurricane, we wouldn't say, okay, this is exactly where the eye wall, and this is exactly how high the winds are going to be along the coast. We would continue to fine-tune that forecast. That is still the case here. We know that there's going to be this wintry mix across the first coast. It's the exact line of where that freeze line, unfortunately, it's pretty tough, is going to be, because that could waver just a bit with a few degrees. So this is why tonight, Lee Southwick's going to be here. She's going to have more information on it. And as we go ahead through tomorrow, Monday, we're definitely going to have this forecast nailed down here for you. I can tell you the further north you go, the higher chance of snow, I should say, is going to be. So if you're across southeast Georgia compared to Putnam County and Flagler County, it's going to be night and day. In fact, if you're in Flagler, St. John's, or Putnam County, I'm not saying it's not an event for you, because you're going to get enough rain where it's going to be ponding on the roadways and stuff like that. But this whole update, all this stuff we're talking about is not for you. It's southeast Georgia. And somebody just asked here, Julicia, about Duval. And I'm going to end here with Duval County, because one thing people have been asking about is the bridges. If we see freezing rain overnight, those bridges could be closed, okay? I think the chance of that happening, it's like, if we're giving you a percentage, 10 to 20%. So we're talking there's a chance. You're going to have to need to see that freezing rain set up, and it's going to have to be accumulated over a certain period of time to get those slick conditions. But even sleet could start to freeze up the bridges too, because as sleet falls, even if it melts upon contact, it could refreeze if temperatures are cold enough, and that creates ice. Yeah, it's tough with this because we don't have salt out there. The roads are not going to be prepped for it. So just think, if it snows enough where you got the frozen precipitation, or not snow, if you got enough frozen precipitation. Sorry, guys, I've been awake since like 11 o'clock last night because we had all the rain overnight. So I'm trying my best to keep my thoughts in order here while answering your questions on the fly here. So one more look here, county by county, furthest off towards the north. You're going to be seeing that higher chance of snow. Here's Duval County. Mostly rain in Duval, but sleet and freezing rain is possible, especially for western areas of Duval County once you get west and northwest of the river. And the further away from the river you get, so if we're talking about out towards like Cecil area, probably going to see maybe some sleet at the very least there. But right along the river, NES Jacks might get enough modifying where you don't see that and it just stays rain. So it's very close. There's a lot of things going on here. It's not just below or above 32 degrees, and it's why we're a little wishy-washy with the forecast, but we're trying our best to nail it all down here for you. So Jackie, I'll end with this. She said Duval snow. I think if Duval County gets any snow, it is going to be flurries, wet snow, but it'll melt on contact, and it would be in the middle of the night. It's more sleet and the sloppy stuff that I'm more concerned about with the downtown Jacksonville area. But obviously, as I mentioned, that could change. This is something, as we see this develop, we're going to nail down continuously. So firstcoastnews.com, as well as streaming here on FCN Plus. We're going to continue to give you more information. Lee Southwick's going to be back here later tonight to give you the next update on this as well. So we got a variety of team coverage here. Multiple sources. You're watching this update wherever you are right now on our Facebook, YouTube, or FCN Plus. I appreciate that, and you're staying smart to get ahead of this. So make sure you let your friends and family know that this event is coming. Not to panic. Make sure that they have a reality of what's going to be happening here. But they know, simple things like the 3 Ps: pipes, plants, pets, as well as just protecting your home if you have a space heater up or anything like that. Space heaters, I fear, might be one of the big issues with this. Maybe not people driving, but people setting up space heaters and not properly installing them or setting them up correctly. Kind of like after tropical systems, we worry about generators and people running them inside their house. That is my concern as far as some of the impacts coming out from this. So there's a lot going on with this. Yeah, we're going to keep you guys posted. One more question before I let you go. Terry asked about Baker County. Higher chance of some sleet, maybe freezing rain in western Baker County. Definitely a higher chance than Duval County, but less than Ware County. So you are right on the edge here. And this graphic even shows northern Baker County showing the higher chance of some freezing rain. So there's a lot happening here. So of course, if you have any additional questions, let us know here. Shoot us a message and we'll do our best to keep them answered for you. All right. Yeah. Keep checking back in here at First Coast News Plus and at firstcoastnews.com. I'm meteorologist Robert Speta.